Hey lovely teachers! Today we're going to look at a practice hack that is incredibly simple but deceptively so. So this practice hack, if you can call it a hack at all, is actually from a student's mum. So the parent of a student that I teach years ago at this stage said this phrase that they had started in their house, which was scales before school. So in their case, it was literally the student was doing their scales to get part of their practice done before school each day. So in the morning before they got going with their day, they would do a run through of their scales. They don't currently do that anymore, but the phrase has always stuck with me, and it's a suggestion that I make to many parents in my studio. Of course, it doesn't have to be literally scales. That's not what I'm talking about. So it could be literally scales, but it could be anything that you can break apart from your other practice. So it could be just like one of your pieces, maybe one that's particularly important, or just any one of the pieces. It could be a technical exercise, it could be scales, it could be a theory game, it could be anything. But the point is to do something before you get going with your day. And again, it doesn't have to be school either. It could be work, it could be whatever you're going to do. This is an incredibly simple idea, not revolutionary, but giving it a quick little name like that does help it to stick in your brain. And it can be more effective than you might realize. Quite a bit more. Because this isn't just about what you do during that time. Yeah, you get a run through of each of your scales. Okay, great. I mean, any practice is good practice, but we're literally talking about 5 minutes. It's not just about what you do during that time. This is about another phrase that many piano teachers use, touching the piano every day. Just aim to touch it every day. And we don't mean literally walk past and give it a swipe, obviously, but aim to do something every day, especially in the beginning. So if we do scales before school, and that's all we fully commit to, like we have ambitions to do practice after school as well, of course, because we want to do other things. But if we can get in the routine, even just of the scales before school, it means that the instrument is on your mind every day or every weekday. And that makes a huge difference. It makes it more likely that you'll remember to practice later, but it also just keeps your brain worrying and thinking about music, about playing the piano every day without fail. Now here's the thing. This can apply to us too. So here's where I have a challenge for you. I think you should consider scales before school, or the equivalent for you. I've been doing this recently myself. What it means to me is, and it doesn't have to be literally scales for me, it could be anything that I want to fit in a little bit of. It just means a small amount of practice before roughly 9. Because that's when I would have started school. And that's where it kind of fits in my routine, that it's sort of like after breakfast. That's really when it is for me. So I get up, I do lots of work, have breakfast a bit later, and then I straight away do some kind of piano practice before I go back to working or doing anything else that I have to get on with that day. It makes a huge difference because that thing is then on your mind all day in little ways, in the back of your brain without you realizing it, but it's on your mind. This video is brought to you by Vivid Practice. Keeping students accountable doesn't have to be complicated. VividPractice.com helps music teachers manage assignments effortlessly while encouraging smarter practice habits. With an intuitive teacher portal, progress tracking, and built-in messaging, you get all the tools that matter without the extra fuss. Designed by music teachers for music teachers. Sign up for free at VividPractice.com and simplify your studio today. So I hope that you'll try it yourself, and I hope that you'll suggest it to students as well, because it really does make a huge difference. Just fitting it in early in the day means that your brain is ticking over about those scales or about whatever it is that you worked on. It can be a lot more transformative than you think for your students and for you, because you touch the piano every day without fail. We talk a lot about routine, but I think parents and students can end up thinking that it has to be a big to-do. And that's why I love this idea, because it encourages thinking with just a little bit. And maybe there's another little bit later, but let's focus on that little bit and get that going first. Now, It won't suit every family for it to literally be before school. I want to acknowledge that. And the way I do say it to parents, I say it with a little giggle, and I acknowledge that it never would have worked for me as a child because I was always late in the mornings, and it was like a push to get me out the door for my mum. So maybe that's them, but I know some kids, some of my students, are up before their parents. And maybe they put on the headphones, they have a digital piano, and they do a little bit of practice in the morning that way. So always say it with a pinch of salt, I guess, just to make sure they don't think you're being dogmatic and saying your child has to practice for 2 hours before school and then come home and do more practice or whatever, unless that's what you're really saying, but I'm gonna guess not. So share it with parents, mention it in new parent interviews, mention it to parents from time to time, especially when they're struggling to fit practice in, and share it with a little bit of a giggle to get the point across. That's what works for me. And use the term, if you like, scales before school. I find it catchy, I find it gets the idea across, and it makes a pretty big difference to the overall practice amounts and the practice routine. Give it a go.